Was the moon landing faked? Is Neil Armstrong just a patsy? If I yell at the moon loud enough, will it reveal its secrets to me? Stick around and you might just find out the answers to these questions on this episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Solved! Welcome back to the podcast, Mystery Solvers. Dr. Chad Kimmons here, as always, with my co-host, Cassandra Cherry, also doctor. Forgot to put that in my notes.
I'm so glad you remembered.
Well, I mean, I yell at you when you don't call me doctor, so I might as well.
Oh yeah, a little reciprocity is a little nice here, yeah?
Yeah.
Every once in a while.
Just every once in a while.
Not all the time, just like whenever you need to pick up a beer or something, just
Right.
every once in a while, in moderation.
So I don't feel like I need to ask you what you know about this topic, because...
It's the moon. We scream at it to boost our GPA. Neil Armstrong and his team landed on it. One step for man and y'all that jazz. We know about the moon. Pulls at the tides.
I mean, it's pulls at the tides.
Yeah, it's the mix master of the ocean.
Well, I mean, this isn't just about the moon. This is about specifically landing on the moon.
Yes, fair.
And it's taught in school, at least in U.S. schools. There is, however, a large contingency of people who do not believe that it ever happened. And if you are one of those people, don't let Buzz Aldrin know that you are one of those people, because he will punch you in the face.
Oh, don't punch my grandmother in the face. That would be really sad.
Well, Buzz Aldrin punched a moon landing denier in the face.
That's hilarious.
And that guy still maintains that it never happened.
Oh my gosh.
Normally we cover mysteries on this podcast, but every now and then you'll find that we're going to do a conspiracy theory that needs to be put to rest, because we are experts.
Of course.
We did it with JFK.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Colt and I did it with JFK, and I think there might have been another one, but I can't remember. Anyway, so this is going to be our one conspiracy theory for, the next month and a half or so.
That's fair enough. Sometimes you just gotta address it and just put it in its place, nope.
Yeah.
That's not how it happened.
So yeah, Cassandra and I are going to put this one to bed once and for all.
Uh-huh. Gonna tuck it in, give it some nice warm milk and honey, and kiss it goodnight.
I mean, you can do that if you want, and I'll let you.
That's how you put things to bed, right? That's how children work.
This is not a child. It's a conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Anyway.
That only the really old and the really young can sort of buy into.
So let's go ahead and dive right in. I mean, you're not wrong, but, let's start with the moon landing itself.
Okay.
So the first manned mission to the moon is the culmination of the space race between the U.S. and Russia that started in 1955.
Yeah, specifically when Russia was the Soviet Union, and we
Yes.
couldn't fight it out with weapons because we'd both blow each other to atomized smithereens. So instead we fought over space superiority. Who could get boogie down with the aliens the fastest?
Sure. I don't think aliens was actually a goal. I think it was just putting a person on the moon.
First the moon, then the aliens. One follows after the other.
On August 2nd, the Soviet Union responded to an announcement by the U.S. that they would launch artificial satellites sometime soon.
Okay.
And I'm just going to call them Russia from here on out.
Mm-hmm.
Russia said that they would also be launching satellites in the near future, and it was off to the races. Now, Russia was the first to get a satellite in orbit, the Sputnik, on October 4th, 1957. And this sent waves of panic through the U.S. with people saying that the satellite was actually a spy satellite, spying on the U.S. to gain intel and stuff. That was not true. It was just a satellite.
Okay.
Not to be outdone, the U.S. launched its own satellite 4 months later.
Yeah.
Russia, I'm skipping a lot of stuff here.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of complicated stuff that goes on in between each of these events.
Like the space race itself, if it were mysterious, could be an entire episode.
But it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Russia stepped up their game and put the very first human into space on April 12th, 1961. I forget his name and forgot to put it in my notes. But, however, very American of me, I put the first American's name in my notes. The U.S. responded by sending Alan Shepard into orbit on May 5th, 1961. So just under a month later.
Okay.
And this is when Kennedy decided, fuck it, let's go to the moon. And after a bunch more missions into orbit and several unmanned probes of the lunar surface, the U.S. finally got the upper hand on the Russians on July 20th, 1969. Because that is when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, part of the crew of the Apollo 11, were the first humans to walk on the moon's surface and fulfill Kennedy's goal that he set in 1961 to land a moon on a man.
To land the moon on a man.
Why go to the moon when we can bring the moon to us?
Yay, space rocks!
Because that would destroy the planet. You are an insane person, Mr. Kennedy. We'll start the sentence over. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, part of the crew of the Apollo 11, were the first humans to walk on the moon's surface and fulfill the goal set by Kennedy in 1961 to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. I believe it was fulfilled under Nixon.
Okay.
Do
you think Buzz Aldrin was the person they named Buzz Lightyear after?
I don't know.
Because can you imagine being the second guy to stand on the moon? No one remembers Buzz Aldrin. I didn't know Buzz Aldrin existed. Bless his soul.
Really?
Yeah, you're you always hear about Neil Armstrong, and he probably, sat in the spaceship being like, okay, I gotta say something epic. The first thing I say when I step on the moon, it's gotta be something really cool, man. And Buzz Aldrin's like, yeah, I'm here too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was a third person on the mission, but he had to stay in the ship to, I don't know, keep it from floating away or something.
He was being the responsible one, keeping their systems up and running, and he's like, yeah, I'll just sit here. I'm your designated driver. It's fine.
And I don't know his name either. I didn't put it in my notes. Anyway.
I feel sad for them. Whoever they were.
We all also know the famous first words that were spoken on the moon by Neil Armstrong himself.
Yeah.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mm-hmm. Meaning that, for him, he just stepped off a ladder, but it's a huge leap in the development of technology and whatnot for mankind.
Plus, I like to imagine that he was playing around with the gravity, and he's just like, I take a step, and then I leap, and I never come back down.
Well, that would be not good, because he's just floating free in space.
True. Burning in space.
We've all also seen the image of Aldrin saluting the American flag as it ripples in the solar winds.
Yep.
We've all seen the image of the first boot print made in the dust of the moon's surface. Mm-hmm. So the question here is, why do so many people believe that the moon landing was faked? It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
Just making sure, because you tend to answer a lot of my rhetorical questions.
Well, I have an answer for this one too. Because there's a lot of people who are just like, that's not possible.
So, one of the big things is apparently there were photographic and film oddities. Mm-hmm. We're going to go through a bunch of reasons why people believe this was faked, and then the explanation for those things.
Sure.
So, photographic and film oddities.
Okay.
In some of the photos, the crosshairs appear to be behind objects. The cameras were fitted with a Réseau plate, which is a clear glass plate with a reticle etched on it, which made it impossible for any photographed object to appear in front of the grid. And conspiracists often use this evidence to suggest that objects were pasted over the photographs and therefore obscured the reticle. Now, the explanation for this is that this effect only appears in copied and scanned photos, not the originals. It was caused by overexposure and the bright white areas of the emulsion or bleed over the thin crosshairs. Because the crosshairs are only about, this says 0.004 inches thick, and emulsion would only have to bleed about half that much to fully obscure it.
Okay.
Plus, there are plenty of photos where the middle of the crosshair is washed out, but the rest is intact. And in some of the photos of the American flag, parts of the crosshair appear on the red stripes, but parts of the same crosshair are faded or invisible on the white stripes. So there wouldn't have been any reason to paste white stripes onto the flag.
Right.
The second one is that the crosshairs are sometimes rotated or in the wrong place. And this is really simple. Popular photos are cropped or rotated for aesthetic impact.
Yeah. I do that a lot, especially when I do thumbnails for people's YouTubes.
Yeah.
So it just makes things more interesting when they're on the
Right. This one. The quality of the photographs is implausibly high, which makes me think of that meme. The quality of these photos is too damn high.
Too damn high.
Well, apparently there are a lot of poor quality photos taken by the Apollo astronauts, but NASA chose to only publish the best examples, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And the Apollo astronauts used high-resolution Hasselblad 500 EL cameras with Carl Zeiss optics and a 70mm medium format film magazine. I don't feel like that's relevant to what I just said, so we're gonna delete that.
Okay.
Even though I already said it.
Whatever. I mean, it's in the past, right?
I don't know why I do that. If something's not relevant while I'm reading it,
I'll
delete it out of my notes.
That's fair.
Here's another one. There are no stars in any of the photos. The astronauts also stated in post-mission press conferences that they didn't remember seeing any stars during the EVA, which
seems a little odd.
EVA, I believe, is it's a spacewalk. I can't remember what it stands for. Conspiracists say that NASA chose not to put the stars into the photos because astronomers would have been able to use them to determine whether the photos were taken from Earth or the Moon by means of identifying them and comparing their celestial position, based on what they would be seeing from where they're at. Does that make sense?
I guess.
So, apparently astronomers, if they had faked the photos and put stars in them, astronomers probably would have been able to be like, okay, well, that's actually what it looks like when you stand at this point on the Earth on that day of the year and blah blah blah. So this was clearly taken from Earth. Yeah,
people are very weird about their stars. Especially if you get astrologists, they're like, no, pardon me, excuse me, but if you actually look at this part of the state, if you did this at this time in this part of the year, that means you are a rising Capricorn, Sun, Aries, Moon, Pisces, all sorts of different things, as different conjunctions of the planets and everything. Even if it wasn't a scientist, an astronomer, an astrologer would have called you out.
Yeah, none of that makes any sense to me.
It's fine. It doesn't
nothing
need to make
you just said makes a lick of sense to me. I read horoscopes and I go, yeah, I mean, some of these could apply to me as a Virgo, but some of them don't too. Or when or not your horoscope, but traits of different signs and shit.
Yeah, most horoscopes, the basic stuff, is all apparently based on sun signs only and don't take into account the deeper positions of the stars or anything, and therefore they're all just bogus. But if you're a real astrologer, then you will take into account this and that and the placement of moon in conjunction with Mercury and the retrograde of Venus and all this. And it's I read into it on occasion just because I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, what gets me is in horoscopes, it'll be something like, there's a big opportunities coming your way and make sure that you stay alert for it and don't miss it. And it's that applies to literally everyone. Anyone could have a big opportunity coming. Or, oh, well, one of your relationships is on the fritz. You're always at odds with somebody that you know. I mean, they're very vague intentionally.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not knocking anybody who believes it, but I think it's dumb.
I'm not knocking it, but if you believe it, you're dumb.
I mean, look, you believe what you want, and I will believe what I want. I was going to say something really mean there, but I decided not to. Anyway, I
just read it because it's funny.
The star thing. Apparently, the astronauts were talking about naked eye sightings of stars during the lunar daytime.
Yeah.
But apparently, they regularly saw stars through the spacecraft navigation optics while they were aligning their reference platforms and whatnot.
Yeah.
Also, stars are very rarely seen in the space shuttle mirror and Earth observation photos, or even photos taken at sporting events held at night, because there are cameras that can capture stars. but most cameras don't have the ability to filter out enough light to be able to see the star.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever tried taking a picture of the moon with your phone camera? It looks like 5 times bigger if you're looking at the moon with your eyes, but you try to take a picture with your phone camera and the moon suddenly turns into a tiny pinprick.
Right.
It's really hard to take a good photo of the sky, the nighttime sky, without like a dedicated nighttime sky camera.
When I got my first, the phone that I'm using now that I've had for like 5 years, I was like, man, I'm gonna go take some pictures of the stars. And then I took a picture and I was like, this is terrible. How do people do this?
This looks like ass!
This is the worst experience I've ever had in my 20 some odd years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then the rest of it, like, there's a bunch of other, like, scientific mumbo jumbo that they list, but mostly it's most cameras, especially back then, would not be able to filter out enough light from, like, the sun and whatnot to be able to see the stars. So,
Yeah. And also, plus, the light side of the moon is specifically reflecting the solar rays. And so it makes sense that if you're on the light side of the moon, it's going to be more difficult to see other stars because of light pollution.
Right.
Just like if you had a whole lot of stoplights, you could be able to see where you were, but you can't really see what's going on in the sky.
Right. Ambient light.
Mm-hmm.
The next one that conspiracists bring up is that the angle and color of the shadows are inconsistent, suggesting that artificial lights were used. And the explanation behind this is that shadows on the moon are complicated by reflected light, uneven ground, wide-angle lens distortion, and lunar dust.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of different light sources, like the sun, sunlight reflected from the Earth, sunlight reflected from the moon's surface, sunlight reflected from the astronauts and the lunar module. Like, basically, the sun fucks everything.
Like, you know those reflectors for, like, stage lighting? Like the sort of, like, sheets of aluminum?
Mm-hmm.
Walking on the moon is like walking on a dusty sheet of aluminum.
Okay. You speaking from experience here?
Nope, I'm just imagining it. Because it's like you have a big plane of dusty aluminum that's reflecting light everywhere. How do shadows work? We don't know. The light is coming from, like, directly down onto the aluminum. The aluminum's reflecting light up at you, and it's just like, nothing knows what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and, like, this says that, like, lunar dust that, you know, may have been kicked, because, you know, you kick up dust here on Earth and it'll eventually settle.
Yeah.
You kick up dust on the moon, it's probably not going to settle.
Not for
because
a few years.
The gravity is much, much lower.
Yeah.
And so, like, light scattered by dust that was kicked up by the dudes walking around up there, it screws with shadows and stuff. So
yeah.
Apparently this was this theory about artificial lights was further debunked on Mythbusters episode where they talked about this. So the next one, there are identical backgrounds in photos which, according to their captions, were taken miles apart. This suggests that a painted background was used. The answer for this one is the backgrounds weren't identical, they're just similar because it's the f***ing moon.
I mean, the moon
Like,
doesn't have many identifying features.
Craters, that's it.
Yeah, basically. Like, are you standing in one crater or the other crater? It's the moon. What do you want?
Right, it's not like, oh, well, if we stand over here, there's trees in the background. If you stand over here, there's a river back there. And over here, you can see, you know, the city of New York and the horizon. No, it's the f***ing moon. It all looks the same. Like, come to Kansas, go to any f***ing rural area where there's pastures, and I guarantee you it all looks exactly the f***ing same.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that your wheat fields look the same as our wheat fields.
Exactly.
I can't tell you the number of times I've been on road trips and passed through cow-like fields, and it's just like, cattle.
I think you guys have way more wheat than we do.
Possibly.
Because we're mostly corn and soy.
That makes sense, yeah.
So the next one is that the number of photos taken is implausibly high.
What does that mean?
Up to one photo per 50 seconds.
They were on the moon. You think they weren't excited?
Well, and the thing is, apparently the cameras they were using allowed for like 2 photos per second. Like just back to back, you know. So I guess the calculation of 1 per 50 seconds was based on one astronaut on the surface and does not take into account that there were 2 astronauts sharing the
Because no one
load.
remembers poor Buzz Lightyear.
Aldrin.
Yes.
I feel like, see, I don't even know his name. So, apparently the photos contain artifacts like the 2 seemingly matching C's on a rock on the ground, meaning that they might be labeled studio props. However, the C-shaped objects are most likely printing imperfections and don't appear in the original film from the camera.
Huh. Weird.
It's also been suggested that the C was a coiled hair that somehow got onto it before it was copied or something.
Oh, that makes sense. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, damn it, Janet, we told you to wear a hairnet.
Well, this one, a resident of Perth, Western Australia, a woman named Una Ronald, a pseudonym created by the authors of the source, said that for 2 or 3 seconds she saw a Coca-Cola bottle roll across the lower right quadrant of her television screen that was displaying the live broadcast of the Apollo 11 EVA.
Mm-hmm.
And she also said that several letters appeared in the Western Australia, in the West Australian, discussing the Coca-Cola bottle incident within 10 days of lunar landing. I'm guessing the West Australian is a newspaper. So apparently more than one person saw this. However, there were no such newspaper reports or recordings that have ever been found.
So did they just hallucinate an entire newspaper?
Well, apparently these claims have only ever been relayed by one source. And there are flaws in the story, such as the statement that she had to stay up late to watch the moon landing live is easily discounted by the fact that many witnesses in Australia who watched the landing watched it in the middle of the day.
So there you go.
Because it happened like in the evening, I think, for the US. So, and it was being broadcast by the US.
So whoever that woman is a liar, liar, pants on fire.
Yeah, her pants are cinders by this point.
Yeah.
Ash blowing through the wind.
Mm-hmm. Now all I can think of is like the one Kansas song.
Dust in the Wind?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a book called Moonshot. I'm guessing it's about the moon landing, and it supposedly contains an obviously fake composite photo of Alan Shepard hitting a golf ball on the moon with another astronaut. This was used instead of the only existing real images from the TV monitor, which the editors seemingly felt were too grainy for their book. And the book publishers don't work for NASA, so...
Yeah, so, like, why is that even a point? It's like, yeah, we photoshopped this guy doing golf on the moon. We thought it looked cool.
Well,
and everyone's like, the moon landing was fake.
I mean, it's like if I wrote a book about, I don't know, the Holocaust, and then put in a picture of George Bush talking to some dude, and people are like, oh, the Holocaust didn't exist. George Bush wasn't alive then. Like, what?
That's not how any of this works.
All of everything in the book is factual. The picture has nothing to do with the Holocaust.
Yeah, whoever decided to do the cover like that was dumb, but
right.
The authors don't have control over who puts what on the cover of a book. That's all the publisher. That's all the publisher and the editor. I know this because my dad actually worked as an illustrator for fantasy books for like 30 years. I can tell you some stories about like shenanigans that went on behind the scenes. But yeah, no. The cover and the actual content of a book have nothing to do with each other. Right.
So there's 2 more in this category. One is there appear to be hot spots in some photos that look like a large spotlight was used in place of the sun. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it just goes back to the sun. Like, it says,
do you want to the sun?
Well, it says pits on the moon's surface focus and reflect light like the tiny glass spheres that are used in coating of street signs, or like dewdrops on wet grass or whatever. Again, it's the same shit as before. Like,
yeah, it's how the sun interacts with the surface of the moon. The moon is super reflective.
This is how light works, people. And then finally, this one. Hold on.
What?
Who filmed Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon? Checkmate, mother. motherfuckers.
Oh, God.
There were cameras on the lunar module that recorded it.
It's not like we could have built cameras into the knees of our spaceship. It's not like we planned to film the lunar landing and made, like, contingencies for it.
There was a TV camera that was mounted in the stowage assembly, like where the legs come out and shit.
Yeah.
He apparently deployed this while he was still on the ladder steps. So.
Okay.
And then it was powered on and signal was transmitted back to Earth.
It's like, you guys getting this? I had to crawl into the back of the minivan to get this.
So now we move on to problems with the environment.
Okay.
People say that the astronauts could not have survived the trip because exposure to radiation from the Van Allen radiation belt and galactic ambient radiation. And some conspiracists have suggested that Starfish Prime, which is a high-altitude nuclear test that happened in 1962, formed another intense layer on the Van Allen belt. So basically, there are two main Van Allen belts around the Earth, because they're talking about the radiation like around the Earth, you know?
Yeah.
There are two main ones. The inner one is the more dangerous one, and they pass through this in a matter of like minutes. And the outer belt, which is not really that dangerous at all, they spent about an hour and a half in that one. Plus, they accounted for this, and the astronauts were shielded from the radiation by the aluminum hull of the spacecraft.
Yeah, like, they first test, like, there was the dog sent into space first, right? And there was a lot of animal testing to figure out what was going on before that, before we ever tried sending a person up there. So, naturally, we're trying to figure out, how do we keep people alive going through that belt of radiation?
So,
and we figured it out. That's the only reason why we risked it in the first place.
So I find this kind of funny. Like, first off, they chose a trajectory that would put them in the least amount of danger.
Yeah.
And even the dude who discovered the Van Allen belts, Dr. James Van Allen, rebutted the claims that this would have been too harmful for them.
Good.
So even the dude who discovered that the damn thing existed was like, no, you're dumb.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. They had aluminum. They were fine.
Conspiracists also say that film in the cameras would have been fogged by the radiation. The film was kept in metal containers that stopped radiation from fogging the film's emulsion.
Checkmate. Like, it's like, seriously, do they think that the scientists were dumb? Conspiracy theorists think that scientists are dumb.
I mean, they're flat earthers, so...
Yeah.
What do you expect? So the next one is that the moon's surface during the daytime is so hot that camera film would have melted.
How do they know?
They don't. But scientists do know that there's no f***ing atmosphere.
It's really cold! Actually.
So it wouldn't have trapped... Exactly. Without the atmosphere, the Earth would be cold. The atmosphere is what keeps the heat in.
It's why there's no life on Mars, even though it gets plenty of sunlight. They don't have an atmosphere.
Right.
So you can't support life, because it's cold.
And I think I've also heard people go, well, what about Mercury or whatever? They don't have an atmosphere. Yeah, but they're also billions of miles closer to the sun.
Yeah, it's like right there.
Like, Jesus Christ, use your brain.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so my hand is this far from the microwave and it doesn't hurt because it's like not hot or anything, but then I put my hand inside the microwave and...
Right. They also say that the Apollo... Now, this is a different manned mission, but the Apollo 16 crew could not have survived a big solar flare firing out when they were on their way to the moon, which apparently... No, there were no solar flares that occurred during the flight of the Apollo 16.
Well, there you go. They survived it because there was no solar flare. Ta-da.
Oh, because there were big solar flares in August of 1972, which was after the Apollo 16 returned to Earth and before the flight of the Apollo 17. So,
okay.
Again, Jesus Christ. Do some research. Like, I realize most of these theories came along before the internet, but like there are still people who don't believe that this happened, and it's like, in the information age, how are you this dumb?
Because they never learned critical thinking is part of it.
I really hate the joke because it's overused, but I mean, it's kind of true. As we get more and more information at our fingertips, we seem to be becoming more and more stupid as a race.
It's not so much that we're becoming more and more stupid, it's just that some of us are taking the information and running with it, and other people aren't, and the disparity becomes more and more apparent.
I mean, plus, with everything at your fingertips, you don't really have to learn anything. I mean,
you can just Google and be like, oh, there it is.
How many marriages have been ruined by IMDb?
I don't know. How many marriages have been ruined by IMDb?
It's just a joke, because in the past, it would be like, oh, no, I think that's this guy that's in this movie. No, I think it's this guy. But now, somebody can look it up and be like, boom, I was right, bitch.
If your marriage is ruined by you guys looking up at something on IMDb, there was something wrong to begin with. Right. It's not about the Iranian yogurt.
What? No, hold on. You're not just going to breeze past that. What the fuck are you talking about?
There was once a story about this one woman who was dating this guy, and this guy had this obsession with collecting things. Uh-huh. And he got onto this kick of collecting various yogurts. And his wife was okay with him being a collector and with having a whole bunch of eclectic things going on. But when it got to be the yogurts where he had to have 1 cup of every single different yogurt in existence, mm-hmm. and it started going bad and started causing mold to be growing in the fridge and all this kind of stuff, she got sick of it and she's like, no, I'm not going to have moldy yogurt in my house. And she threw away a whole bunch of it. And apparently there was Iranian yogurt from a certain, really hard to get a hold of company that wasn't here in the US. And he was very upset about it. And she's like, am I the asshole? And I'm like, the Iranian yogurt isn't the problem. Your husband needs therapy.
Oh, so this was an Am I the Asshole post type thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking this was a really well-known thing. I'm like, what?
No. I read Am I the Asshole for Schadenfreude.
Moving on.
Sorry, we got way off topic.
It's okay. It's great outtake material. This is the big one. The flag that was on the surface that the astronauts planted was fluttering in the wind despite there being no wind on the moon. This suggests that it was filmed on Earth and a breeze caused the flag to flutter. Sibril, I don't know who that is, Sibril, said that it may have been caused by indoor fans to cool the astronauts, since their spacesuit cooling systems would have been too heavy on Earth. The answer for this one is that the flag was fastened to a T-shaped rod?
Yeah.
Basically, they fastened it to the rod, and then there was a rod coming out from the top that they fastened it up there, too, so that it wouldn't just hang limp, so that it would be displayed out full. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. And it only seemed to flutter when the astronauts were moving into position, because without air drag, the movements caused the free corners of the flag to swing like a pendulum for some time. And
because inertia.
The flag was rippled because it had been folded during storage, and the ripples could be mistaken for movement in a still photo. But apparently videos show that when they let go of it, it vibrates briefly, but then it just is stills. Yeah. So.
Okay.
The next one is that footprints in the footprints in the moon dust are unexpectedly well preserved, despite the lack of moisture.
It's well preserved because there are no forces of wind acting upon them.
You pretty much got it. Moon dust has not been weathered like Earth sand, and it has sharp edges.
Yeah.
And that allows the dust particles to stick together and hold their shape in the vacuum.
Absolutely. Can you imagine you don't want to walk on the moon barefoot. You would die. Right. But that would be really, really painful.
Apparently, the astronauts have likened it to talcum powder or wet sand.
Yeah.
And the final one in the environmental category is that the alleged moon landings used either a soundstage or were filmed outside in a remote desert, with the astronauts either using harnesses or slow-motion photography to make it look like they were on the moon. I'm not even going to acknowledge that one. That's just dumb.
They're just reaching so hard.
Right. what gets me is that they're like, yeah, they were using harnesses and shit so that they could like fly up in the air and blah, blah, blah. But
if you're using a harness, you can't be out in a desert. You have to have a like sophisticated system of levers and pulleys.
well, I was going to say, you would have seen the harness in the videos and pictures because it was a live
it would
broadcast.
be obvious.
Like, these motherfuckers want to go, oh, there's an X on that rock over there that's not actually there or whatever.
Yeah.
But yet didn't notice that there wasn't actually harnesses or wires or anything attached to these astronauts.
Pick a lane.
Right. Now we move on to the mechanical issues.
Okay.
The first one is that the lunar modules made no blast craters or sign of any dust scatter. This one is apparently pretty simple because there shouldn't be a crater apparently, because most of the thrust to like in the descent was throttled like way far down during the landing, or like
yeah, you don't want to land hard enough to create a crater.
Right.
You would kill the people in the craft. That's called a crash.
or I mean, if nothing else, it would have kicked up enough dust to,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have been able to see anything. Yeah, so basically by the time they touched down, they weren't really, it was just the gravity of the moon pulling them in, which is not enough to really do anything. So that one's pretty simple. Number 2 is the second stage of the launch rocket and or the lunar module ascent stage made no visible flame. Apparently the propellants that were chosen for their simplicity and reliability ignite hypergolically upon contact.
Okay.
So there's no need for a spark.
Right.
I don't know what any of these words mean, but that's what this says.
I kind of get it because it's like, I'm no scientist, but I know that there are some chemicals, some materials, some elements that when they touch, they just create such a huge transfer of energy that it becomes an explosion. It's like putting sodium, like Na, not like salt sodium, but just clear Na into water. Or is it chlorine? Like, no, it's sodium. Because you put sodium into water and it explodes.
Well, and this says that the stuff that they were using typically burns clear, like almost transparent fire. So
yeah,
there wouldn't have been a, whatever. Number 3, the lunar modules weighed 17 tons and made no mark on the moon dust, yet footprints can be seen beside them. So basically, even though it weighed more because it had more surface area to cover, it's like snowshoes.
Yeah.
Because it covers more surface area, it stables it out, and that's why you can't see imprints. Because relative to weight, the footprints, the feet, there was more weight relative to their size. Does that? I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, it's like if anyone has a cat, like if you just have like a nice hefty heavy cat, like maybe the cat's eaten a little bit more than the cat should, and the cat tries to climb onto you for cuddles, the weight of the cat totally rested on the first paw or two as they're trying to climb onto you hurts so much more than when the cat has fully settled on your body and is like just sitting down and purring, because that the entire weight of the cat is invested in 1 point.
I would really appreciate it if you would stop talking about my cat.
No, I'm talking about my cat.
Well, Mo's really fat too, so.
Kiki is a hefty girl.
The last one for mechanical issues is that the air conditioning units that were part of the astronaut spacesuits couldn't have worked in an environment of no atmosphere.
Why?
Apparently these cooling units could only work in a vacuum.
That's dumb.
Because water was from a tank in the backpack flowed out through tiny pores in a metal sublimator plate where it was vaporized into space. The loss of heat from vaporization froze the remaining water, forming a layer of ice on the outside of the plate that also sublimated into space, which would not have worked on Earth.
Yeah.
So
that's just dumb.
Like, again, people who don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, people who don't know how spacesuits work.
Now we get into problems with the transmissions. So one, Apparently, there should have been more than a 2-second delay in communications between Earth and the Moon at a distance of 400,000 kilometers or 250,000 miles. The round-trip light travel time of more than 2 seconds is apparent in all of the real-time recordings of lunar audio, but it doesn't always appear as expected because there may also be some documentary films where the delay has to be edited out.
Yeah.
Like, just for time's sake.
And that's just the documentary editing. That's just like production.
Right.
Post-production.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably what these people are basing it on is, these films that they're seeing where, anyway. This says typical delays in communication were about 0.5 seconds. And it says that claims that the delays were only half a second are untrue. So we're kind of in the same ballpark here because examination of the original recordings shows that it's untrue.
Yeah. It's like someone watched a documentary on the History Channel and was like, aha, if you do this, it's fake. And it's like, okay, but did you watch the, primary source or you're looking at the secondary source here?
Well, and also, there wasn't going to be a consistent delay when you're listening to it because it was being recorded at Mission Control, so there's not going to be a delay there.
Yeah.
So, the next one is the Parkes Observatory in Australia was billed to the world for weeks as the site that would be relaying communications from the first moonwalk. However, 5 hours before transmission, they were told to stand down. I guess some conservatives, some conspiracists are like, oh, well, why'd they do that? Yeah, because it was faked. But the timing of the first moonwalk was changed after they landed. Because apparently they landed, and, it wasn't until a few hours later that they actually were able to climb out. And anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they had to probably deal with some things, technical issues.
But this says that delays in getting the moonwalk started means that the Parkes Observatory actually covered almost the entire moonwalk. So
weird.
Number 4 is that Parkes, again, the Parkes Observatory supposedly had the clearest video feed from the moon, but Australian media and all other known sources ran a live feed from the United States. Apparently, people in Australia saw the live moonwalk several seconds before the rest of the world because, yeah. It all adds up. I don't know why they're taking issue with this.
It's like, well, aha, if Australia got it first, then it couldn't have been broadcast from the US. Clearly they were in the outback filming it, and then it broadcast from Australia to the rest of the world.
Right. But apparently it was relayed to the United States and from there was broadcast. But because it was in Australia, Australians saw it, well before everybody else, so.
Weird. And, how did they know this? Twitter?
I don't know.
Twitter didn't exist.
I know. I have no idea.
How would they cross-reference this?
A lot of it doesn't say where people are coming up with these theories.
Yeah. Future theory, but it's just reminding me of how, there was this one Japanese source for a particular mystery, and, it started in Japan, and then one American source got a date wrong. And then all of the rest of the American material referenced that one source, and so the wrong date got spread around English sources, whereas in Japan it was more like, this happened a month earlier. Are you okay, America?
That's kind of like D.B. Cooper. The name that the guy gave was Dan Cooper,
yeah.
But and there was a suspect, D.B. Cooper, and a journalist got the two mixed up, and that's how the original, the hijacker of the plane became D.B. Cooper, was because he got him mixed up, ran it in print, and it just got reprinted, to the point where he's just now D.B. Cooper, when the name that he gave was just Dan Cooper. So there's all kinds of other stuff. So, I mean, this one it's a lot less of a mystery, but I felt like we needed...
It's a mystery because people made it a mystery.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and part of, the demystifying a mystery is, taking the clouds that are obscuring it and, blowing them away.
Right. Debunking all of these theories, and which we've done. So, I guess I'm going to ask 2 questions. The first one is, why do you think people still don't believe that the moon landing happened?
Well, why do people believe that the Earth has only been in existence for 6,000 years.
Because they're dumb.
I don't think it's because they're dumb. I think it's because they are trusting of certain sources over others.
That's fair.
Like, my grandparents, like specifically my grandpa, was super religious. And he absolutely bought into whatever his church was saying 100,000%. And if their church said dinosaurs weren't real, humans have only been existent on this planet for 6,000 years, the universe has only existed for 6,000 years because that's what the Bible said, he'd believe them. And if they said you can't touch the moon, you can't reach the moon, he'd believe them.
What gets me about the dinosaurs thing is that like a lot of Christians who don't believe the dinosaurs were real, if you ask them, where did these bones come from? They'll be like, oh, God just put them there. So you telling me God is just a trickster? Like he's Loki or something? And he was just like, this is really going to with humans later on, man. Like, this is going to be awesome. It's going to take about probably like 7,000 years, but the payoff's going to be huge. And so he's up there like right now talking to Gabriel, looking down at us going, look at them. They still believe that those things existed. These idiots.
Oh my gosh.
Nah, I don't think God plays like that.
No.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's the echo chamber thing where...
Yeah. People believe what they want to believe because people that they trust tell them to believe
they
it.
surround themselves with people who believe similar things.
Yeah. And if you try to break their bubble, it just makes them even more adamant that they're right.
Right. And I mean, that goes both ways too, like religious people and non-religious people. And then the second question is, I mean, since we're talking about it, do you believe the moon landing happened?
Yes. I fully believe that the moon landing happened.
I also do, but I think there's something we're not being told.
Oh, obviously. There's always something we're not being told. It's the government.
I believe that when they were orbiting the moon, they saw something on the other side of the moon, and they don't want anybody to know about it. Whether it was,
like an alien space station?
Whether it was an alien space base. Because, you know, we never do. There's a whole half of the moon that we never see.
Yeah, because it's just never facing the Earth.
Right.
It's always facing away.
I think there's something over there that they saw from orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And because, I mean, Buzz Aldrin talks about moon men a lot. Like, this is not a joke.
Wait, he really does?
Yes. If I remember
this
right.
Is why no one knows about Buzz Aldrin. It's because he knows about the Moon Men, and he won't shut up about the Moon Men. So it's like Buzz Aldrin doesn't exist. Moon Men don't exist. Buzz Aldrin doesn't exist.
Maybe it wasn't Buzz Aldrin. But I typed in Buzz Aldrin Moon Men, and the second thing that comes up is Buzz Aldrin hates being called the second man on the moon.
Oh, bless his heart.
And the third one is Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon. Oh, which astronaut believes in moon men? Okay, so there was a Navy astronaut. I was thinking it was Buzz Aldrin. I don't know why. There was a Navy astronaut. He was the sixth man on the moon, and he believes in alien intervention.
Okay.
I don't have time to read this whole thing, but... I don't know. I knew there was some astronaut that talked about like either moon men or aliens or whatever. Anyway, I think they saw something on the other side of the moon, and that was cut out of the broadcast or something. And they're not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, because I can fully believe that they recorded the live touchdown on the moon and everything, and they did all that live, but they wouldn't have broadcasted it live just in case there was something that they might need to hide. And then they might have edited it and then sent out the edited version that didn't have the weird stuff in it, and that could account for the discrepancies.
Passed it off as being a live broadcast. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
We're vibing here. I'm kind of, we're in the same ballpark. I'm you know. Yep. I don't
Still believe the landing happened, but
yeah,
I also believe that the government will censor literally everything and anything.
It's been 100% proven that we went to the moon.
Yeah.
It's, what did we find up there? I think, is
the real mystery.
Yes, and that is a topic for another episode.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, the Pentagon did declassify those videos of UFOs.
See, I'm not even sure I believe that shit, though.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I believe they're UFOs. I don't believe they're aliens.
Yeah. But just, if they're not aliens, what the f*** are they?
I don't know. And I mean, it might not even be aliens that they found on the other side of the moon. It could just be maybe the reason we don't see the other side of the moon is because there is no other half of the moon. I don't know.
That'd be hilarious. But here's another theory. There has been enough time in the existence of the Earth for humans to have built a civilization up to the standards we have now and more, and then had it all wiped out in a catastrophic climate event like the Ice Age. And that could have brought us back down to, like, square one.
And we just lost all record of it?
Yeah, and there wouldn't be a record of it because it would have been, like, ground to oblivion by the glaciers. And so there's a theory proposed that humans got up to the level of space travel and left the Earth when the climate got too bad. And those are the aliens. They're just humans from, like, thousands of years ago.
It seems like we're pretty much in agreement here that the moon landing did happen. That's been proven. Yeah. But there's something, I don't know, something ain't right going on here. Something was covered up.
It's the government. Something's always covered up. We just don't know what.
Russia actually beat us to the moon, and they have a base on the other side of the moon.
Oh, no!
Going on record, that's what the U.S. government is
That's what it is. The Russians have a secret moon base. That's why we had to have the Space Force.
There's been a tenuous alliance between the two ever since to keep this secret for some reason.
World domination. Who knows?
Russia's like, if you tell anybody, we'll launch nukes from the moon, so you better keep it. Mum's the word.
Yeah, and that's why we've enacted the Star Wars program and have been like super
Space Force.
defensive ever since.
Space Force. Anyway, well, I think that wraps this one up. So that wraps up another, not necessarily mystery, but, going on the record right now, moon landing happened. If you question us, you will be put down. So, all you moon landing deniers, prepare for that.
Prepare to be put to bed.
Not
like this theory. With hot milk.
Somehow it went from we're going to murder you to we're just going to we're going to tuck you in real nice and tight.
Well, you always got on my case whenever I'd say mercilessly.
I didn't get on your case. I just am not as ruthless as you, apparently. Like, apparently. I was going to try to do it, in a humane way. But Cassandra over here wants to slit throats and disembowel people.
Well, what part of putting people down doesn't involve death?
I didn't say it's always going to involve death, but we don't have to eviscerate people. Anyway.
I like the overpower kills. Those are more entertaining.
As usual, guys, if you would like to, what am I trying to say here?
The outro. Follow us on... Podchaser and LinkedIn and
LinkedIn. We don't have a LinkedIn.
I was just trying to find words.
As usual, guys, if you have a mystery you want us to solve right here on the podcast, you can send that to mysterysolvedpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com. You can also get a hold of us on Twitter at UMS_podcast, on the Facebook group, on the Discord. Check out our Patreon. We've got one bonus episode and a bunch of outtakes up there. $10 a month. I mean, you spend more than that for 2 days worth of Starbucks. So,
So you could afford to buy us both a cup of coffee, right?
Just a bunch of extra content on the Patreon. And that's patreon.com/unsolvedmysteriessolved. And I think that's all I have. Do you have anything else, Cass?
Nothing on my end today.
Okay. Well, then I guess that wraps it up, and we'll see you right back here next week with a brand new mystery. And thanks for listening.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye now. Shut up, guys. This is why I don't do these things in person.